Welcome to Sunday Brunch with Higher Heights. I'm Glenda Carr, president and co-founder, and I am that late girlfriend. So, oftentimes when you go to brunch and you sit around waiting for somebody because they're late, that's what's happened today because of technical difficulties, y'all. But I see many of you have hung in here. You've dropped where you're from. I see people are tuning in from Indiana, Maryland. But if you haven't tuned in before, we're Higher Heights, your political home. We are creating a safe, trusted space for Black women to flex our collective political power 365 days a year. And so this year, we are just 113 days, 11 hours, and about 30 minutes before the end of voting. This is one of the most consequential election cycles, and you are rocking with us. We're providing Black women with the tools to vote, run, win, and lead. Let us know if you tuned in last Sunday brunch, Essence Edition. I think you would say a lot has happened since last week, and well, hell, a lot has happened since last night. This is Sunday Brunch, the RNC edition. The Republican National Convention begins tomorrow. And so two things are happening. We're gathering some of our friends that have been part of our work over the last couple of years to bring compelling conversations. And we are also going to show you some video. We hit the ground running in Milwaukee this week and talked to Black women voters. So to start, we are going to bring on two people that many of you have seen not only on national TV, two amazing national leaders, an author, a contributor on many of our national networks. You see her voice very prominent. So bringing on Adrian Shropshire, the president of Black PAC, and our friend Sophia Nelson, a contributor and author. Thank you, ladies, for joining us.
Good to be here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
I just want to be like, so I don't know. Yesterday we watched unfold. I was actually shopping. So I had my phone down. I wasn't even listening to my book, my Audible book. I'm in Houston. So when we talk about people caring about what's happening in their day-to-day lives, we had to we had to build our refrigerator from scratch. So I'm in there, with everybody, the Hunger Games, grabbing all the things I can. I come outside to aid everybody. And so certainly, we've always said we are living in some of the most politically toxic, racially divisive, and frankly, violent times of our generation. And I certainly think we saw that play out yesterday. And so would love to start with just hearing your reflections about this. And then we'll talk about kind of what does this mean for the election season? What does it mean going into the two conventions?
Glenda, I'll start. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody who's watching us. And it's a privilege always to be with you on this platform. First of all, I hope you guys in Houston are doing okay. You've been in our prayers, a lot of friends and family down there, and sounds like you've been dealing with a lot. And I know that your leadership is lacking in Texas. I'll be kind and just say that I hope that the president has been great, and I know that he's going to send you what you need, but you are definitely not just in our thoughts, but if we can do something collectively, let us know. We can set up GoFundMe, we can do whatever, let's do it. My thoughts about last night are this, it's Sunday, and, we as Black women are spiritual women. We're women of faith first and foremost, and I kept thinking about something my grandmother said all the time we were little, and she used to say, there's a running day and a catching day. Be like, what does that mean? Running day, catching day. And what she was saying is you reap what you sow, that you can only do wrong so much, be unkind so much, not treat people well so much before you have to deal with the consequences. And so what I'm saying is that first, I'm not surprised that we would have this type of political violence in this season. Things have been getting very heated for a while now. And I also don't think things have to be mutually exclusive, that you can't call out the former president for who he is, what he says, and what he does, and still feel empathy and sympathy for the trauma of the people at the event, for him to have a wound on his ear. I think we can all say, whether we agree with him or not, or like him or not, that we're grateful he did not get killed yesterday. That would have been terrible. It would have ripped an already divided America apart more so. And I think we would have had more violence. I think it would have been untenable. But I do think that we have to keep our eye on the ball, sisters. And what I mean by that is, again, we are Christian women. We understand the law of sowing and reaping. We understand that I saw that Trump had posted last night on True Social that he was grateful to his life. That he believes God saved his life. Okay. If you believe that, that's a good thing. Let's see it in the way you act, in the way you speak, in the way you lead. And so if there is a change, it will be interesting to see. I don't think there will be, but you can always hope. And I think that when I say don't take our eye off the ball, Glenda, what I'm saying is this is the most consequential election of our lifetimes, period, full stop. There will not be another one this consequential. It's not about the two candidates. Both the candidates are, octogenarians, they're senior citizens, they're up in age. They won't be here long into the next on the line. And I think Vice President Harris has done a great job of being clear that that is what the issue is of this election: reproductive freedom. Black women and our freedom to own our businesses and have organizations like the PAC that was going to help Black women with their equity funding and everything. And then they got taken to court because the other side, rich billionaires, Richard Bloom and his buddies, claimed that they were being reverse discriminated against because Black women were going to get a 1/10% of VC funding. Freedoms about the right to vote, the right to speak without being attacked or assaulted, the right to protest, all the things that we value, those things are on the line in this election. And so I would simply say that, again, we can feel empathy and sympathy and be grateful that Trump's life was spared. We can also be grateful that more people weren't hurt. Our hearts break for those who lost their lives just being at a political rally. That's horrible. It shouldn't happen here. But I want us to keep our eye on the ball. Don't get disrupted. Don't get distracted about what's at issue here. And I hope that the president, I'll end with this. I hope that the foolishness that's been going on with respect to the president and them telling him to step down because he had a bad debate. I've been doing politics for 30 years. I've been in a lot of campaigns where candidates were down 7 points, 10 points, 3 points, 4 points. And I've never seen anyone tell them they have to step aside because they don't think they can win. That's not how this works. And I've never seen anyone have to step aside because they had a bad debate or because they didn't have a good night or a good day. That doesn't happen. And I think that the Democrats need to pull it together now and get focused on the mission and to understand the assignment. So that's my word for today. And those are my thoughts.
I will just co-sign all of that because I think all of that is exactly right. I think that in this moment as well, I mean, obviously what we saw yesterday was shocking and terrible. I think it brings up everything that, the majority of Americans have been, calling for in terms of reducing gun violence, in terms of making sure that weapons of war are not readily available on our streets. I think it just reinforces the notion that we can and must do better because people lost their lives at a political rally. And so, some still in critical condition. And so, there is that particular point in terms of, the readily available access to firearms. There's also the reality of just violent political rhetoric, and how long we've been dealing with it. Right. And that there's, should be a much higher expectation and accountability around political leaders and the language that they use. And so, whether we talk about January 6th and the reaction of some, and the reaction of others to that moment, whether or not we talk about the assaults on Nancy Pelosi's husband, and the way in which, in the aftermath of that, we saw political leaders apparently thinking it was a good idea to, make, homophobic jokes about that assault. We need to expect more. And so now we see people calling for, people to use, not to use, violent political rhetoric on the other side of the aisle, so to speak. People have been calling for a long time. And so, we are the inability of our leaders to actually de-escalate, or the unwillingness of one party to be, not willing to de-escalate in moments like this and others is, it's real. And so, I think that what we can expect, right, in the aftermath and heading, deeper into both convention season and toward the election is, I think, what we're seeing right now, and that is the dichotomy between who is saying what. And folks need to pay attention, because it tracks with what Sophia was saying about what is at stake in this election. Democracy or not, right? Normalcy in terms of political relations in this country or not, right? Or a continuation of violent political rhetoric. And we can choose. We have a choice to make. And I agree, we should not lose sight of that. We are talking about either sustaining an America that gives us a chance at a more perfect union, an America that, an American democracy that gives us a chance to get to a true multiracial democracy, or we're talking about completely crashing out. And so that's the decision that's before us in this election. And we will get there, by insisting that people watch their mouths. Right, because that is ultimately what, we get here, because people can't watch their mouths and they say whatever they feel like saying, regardless of the impact and the implications on the nation as a whole. And so people need to watch their mouths right now. And so I think, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that mis and disinformation is not running amok inside our communities, that we are in the work that Higher Heights is doing, even right in this moment, is helping with that. I think that we need to make sure that we are doing the work to inform people, again, about what the stakes are, make sure that people understand and that they are very clear as we head toward, into these conventions and toward Election Day.
If I can just add something that Adrian said, I think it's definitely watching our mouths, so to speak. But let's be honest, go back to, I think I saw a major shift starting to occur in this country with respect to our rhetoric. Obviously, when Trump came on the scene in the 2015, 2016, I'm the former Republican here. I'm a never Trumper. I'm one of the people who helped start the Lincoln Project and all of that. And there was a group of us that started to be concerned around 2010 when we saw the anti-Obama sentiments. It was real clear that there was this backlash, and the Tea Party. Mm-hmm. This MAGA movement is not new. It has just gotten more radicalized, more angry, more rural, more white, more male. But it's an open assault again on the freedoms of every bit of progress that's been made by women, by racial minorities, LGBTQ plus communities, etc. And I think that one of the things Adrian said that's really true about where we find ourselves in this moment is when Paul Pelosi was attacked in his home at night in bed, asleep. This is an 80-something-year-old man. Now, all of us over a certain age were raised right. Remember everything you need to know you learned in kindergarten, good manners, polite, respect, all those things. And the vitriolic, disgusting responses to that man's attack by Trump Jr. I mean, you can go on their Twitter feeds, pictures of a male underwear with a hammer, a bloody hammer, insinuating that this man was a homosexual and was at a homosexual bar and had homosexual lovers and Nancy. I mean, it was just horrid, the nasty filth that comes out of people's mouths now, to your point. And it is so commonplace and it has become so accepted and so normalized that it no longer matters, to the point that the media wanted to basically take President Biden out to dry because he stumbled in a debate. He had a bad night. It was bad. But you're going to ignore all that stuff because it's so normal now. It's such a celebrity housewives culture that we live in that I think people like that. They like the drama. They like the crazy. And so I'm saying all that to say that we didn't just get here. This has been a long walk to us getting here. And we're not going to go backwards real quick either. No matter who's elected, God forbid that Trump is reelected. But even if Biden's reelected, they are not going to go gently into that good night. They're not going to accept the election results. This is where we are for a while. And we need to have a plan, particularly as Black women, because like I mentioned with the case with the Fearless Fund and everything else that's been going on, go back to how they took out Claudine Gay at Harvard. That was not an accident. The other two white women, one resigned at Penn, she didn't face half the drama, and the other one at MIT didn't even get scathed. The Black woman was focused on because they were not happy that she was there. After almost 400 years of Harvard, and they had the first Black president, she didn't make it 6 months. That's not by accident, sisters. And so you see this in every industry. You see the attacks on DEI. Those are very focused. The attacks on reproductive freedom. I'm a pro-life conservative, but I believe that every other woman has a different believe in America and freedom. You believe in everybody has the same freedom you do. You don't get to tell somebody what to do with their body just because I may make a different choice. And that the fact that we're in this place now in 2024, the Supreme Court is going totally buck wild. They're just off the rails. I don't even know what to say about them. And what I'm saying is I want you to understand that this is that this isn't just a moment. There's a big thing happening and we need a plan. And so Glenda, congrats to you and God bless you for the work you do, because this is consequential and Black women need to be organized. And I know we have a lot of different groups. We have our sororities, we have all that, but we really need to be politically astute and understand that we are in an assault that is intentional and very focused by conservative, rich white men in this country who are very clear about they want to turn the clock back. Very clear.
Yeah, absolutely. They woke up and realized that they are aging dinosaurs, right? That we have an aging white community, white leadership. I would even say for, some of our partners, Adrian, right? The work since 2017 has been about uplifting women's leadership and women of color, and particularly Black women's leadership. Right now, Black women are leading across all sectors. And this is a direct backlash. There is literally, a discussion about a Black speaker named Hakeem, a new Supreme Court justice named Ketanji, and a swirl of conversations about the vice president and what's next for her, Kamala. And then many of our national organizations are led by Black women. Some of the historically white organizations are now the largest. Human rights campaign, a Black woman. Sophia, I don't know if you're doing Hearts for real. Planned Parenthood. And these women are going back to the headlines about a DEI vice president or potential president, discounting the fact that we have been built for this moment, that our education background, our experience, our lived experiences are the leadership that can coexist in this moment. And I certainly agree about words matter, and there needs to be a conversation about the cooling period beyond this, because you have vulnerable people that have mental illness that are listening to this, young minds. We don't know much about the shooter, but it's in line with many of the mass shootings that have happened by young white men that have access to guns. They're listening to us. One of my favorite books is from Angie Thomas called The Hate You Give, right? Mm-hmm. And we're living in that moment that the hate you give will come back. And we're living in very, trying times. Again, I'm in Houston. Our neighbors do not have the same political ideology, but we all don't have well, we didn't have, but we didn't have power at the same time. We were dealing with the same things, and we should be able to be neighborly. And so this is the work of Higher Heights over the next couple of months, is having leaders like Sophia and Adrian to have direct conversations with the Black women and our allies who are watching today, because we are the beginning of shifting this narrative. We can lead and shift the narrative by having conversations at our living room couches and in our neighborhoods. So thank you, Adrian and Sophia, for your time today at Sunday Brunch with Higher Heights.
Glenda, I was giving you hearts because what you said was really good about Katanji and about Hakeem and about Vice President Harris. I mean, there is a real palpable fear. It's irrational that they have about the overtaking of our America, our way of life. If you read Project 2025, we didn't get to go there, that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. But if you read Project 2025, one of the opening sentences is protect the future for white children, or making sure that white children have a future. I mean, I read that 6 times and I couldn't wrap my arms around that they actually said it out loud. I was like, wow. I mean, that's what it boils down to. There's a fear that it's immigrant children, it's kids of color, it's LGBTQ plus all these other marginalized groups who are taking over, and white people are going to be in danger in this country, and they believe that. So like I said, this isn't going to end peacefully and nice, in my humble.
I think we lost her. And I realized, Adrian, I just wanted to stop one moment because you've been doing some great research. And I think bringing it back to kind of what Black voters are saying this moment. Clearly, we all hit Twitter or X, Threads,
or whatever.
Facebook. I'm still I'm on Facebook. It's where I am. IG. And we're going to talk a little bit about this later in the segments, about everyone being careful about how you talk in this moment on social media, because everybody is watching. But it's important for your voices to be out there. It's a little bit about what we're going to talk about later about the women we talk to on the street. But Black women and Black voters have concerns, and they have aspirations for this country. So before we end this segment prematurely, as I tried to do, Adrian, share a little bit about what you've been hearing from Black voters. And this is by clear what they were saying last week, not what I think it's probably going to be consistent. Because we are consistent, informed voters in this moment, but we certainly are looking for leadership and data that Black PAC has always provided for us.
Well, I think that there's also an assumption that people are hanging on the edge of every political moment that's happening in this country. And the reality is that people are not, right? They're trying to live their lives, right? They're trying to buy groceries. They're trying to put gas in their car. They're trying to, watch over what's happening with their children at school. Like, all of these things are happening in people's lives. And so I don't know that anything that the last couple of days changes much in terms of, how Black voters are viewing what's happening, other than the increased fear. Because the thing that we didn't talk about, and this is the thing that's always at the top of mind for Black folks, is the fact that we've seen hate crimes rise over the last, certainly since the Trump era. And that is a big worry for people, right? Not just generally or sort of intellectually or academically, but people worry about their physical safety. And we've seen hate crimes rise. We know that Black folks are always at the top in terms of, in terms of hate crimes and the impact of hate crimes in this country. And so, I think fear is a real issue that we have to deal with. But what we've seen largely from voters, and this was sort of both pre-debate. We were in the field with the poll when the debate happened, so it was pre-debate, and then also slightly, after the debate. And what we've seen is sort of an uptick, right? Uptick in support for Joe Biden. Right. From our last poll in November, he's up plus 10 points. We've seen sort of a decrease in people's anxiety, particularly around the economy. Right. So people are not saying, the economy is getting worse for me in the same numbers. They're actually saying, many more people saying it's staying the same. Obviously, it's not what we want. We want people to feel like the economy is working for them. But holding steady is not where people were, right, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. So we've seen an uptick in people's both that sort of drop in anxiety in terms of the support for for the president and the vice president. We've seen their numbers go up in terms of, you know, how warm people feel toward them. We've also seen people increase their concern. You know, there's this question that we ask in all of our polls, which is what is the biggest threat to the Black community? And in every poll, the response from Black voters is the reelection of Donald Trump, far and away the number one answer, followed closely by the rise in white supremacy. And obviously, those two things are not disconnected for Black voters. And that's why I feel like this moment really will, you know, exacerbate, right, that sense of worry and concern and threat that Black people feel. And so there is a sort of eyes on the prize, you know, that folks have. People do understand what the stakes are. But that's not to say that everything is rosy, right? You also have a lot of folks who are saying, what is the point, right? There's a lot of folks that we're, you know, concerned are, you know, on the, you know, potential folks who will just sit out, right? There's folks who are, you know, obviously looking credibly at third party candidates. And so there's a lot of work that we have to do, one, to help people get clear on the moment, right? And to get, you know, we keep talking about enthusiasm, like there's an enthusiasm gap and Black voters aren't enthusiastic. Well, hell, I'm not enthusiastic. Like none of us are. And in this moment, quite frankly, we don't require enthusiasm, right? We require that people understand what is at stake for not just this moment, but for literally future generations. Right. And so we require that. We don't require the people to be excited and to be enthusiastic. That's not required. We know that we need to be determined about where we are and where we need to go and where we know we need to be, not just for ourselves, our children, but literally for future generations, right? Generations unborn. And so I think that that's the work that we need to do. We need to make sure that people are engaged. We need to make sure that they have the information and the education that they need to have, because we also know that voting rules are changing, right, around the country. We need to make sure that people are informed about what has and hasn't changed. We know that there are, you know, we've seen lots of attempts to purge the rolls, right? We need to make sure that people are checking their status, making sure they are still on the roll, getting back on if they've been knocked off. So there's a lot of work that we need to do to hold people in this moment, right? And to not make people feel like we're not trying to gaslight people, like we're in difficult times, right? Things are hard. And we need to acknowledge that, because I think that oftentimes people feel like we're not acknowledging the real challenges that they are experiencing by just saying, go vote, as if going to vote will fix everything. And we know it doesn't, right? But it is a power that we have, and it is a power that we need to utilize. And so that's the work before us. I think Black voters are moved, like as the election gets closer, as we always know, people start to zone in, right? And so we need to make sure that we are expediting, right, where we need to get people to sooner rather than later, because the noise, right, also is depresses the vote. Right. So when people are overwhelmed by what they're hearing, when there's chaos and confusion inside the Democratic Party, people hear that, they see that, right? These moments will make people be like, what is happening? I keep saying to folks, all of the noise that's happening is going to lead people toward fatalism and defeatism. Right. And so we need to, where we can control ending the noise, we need to end it. Right. Because we have to be about the work of talking to people and moving people along in this process. And so I think there's lots of hopeful signs in the research that we've done recently. We've been doing focus groups. We're obviously knocking on doors in battleground states and hearing similar things from voters. But we have a lot of work to do to make sure that people feel like engagement in this moment is in their best interest and in the best interest of our community.
Thank you, Adrienne, for your continued research and organizing, and Sophia for being a voice for this moment. We literally, too, Adrienne, have hit the streets and have been in Milwaukee. And so our next segment, we will feature conversations we had with everyday Black women in Milwaukee from different experiences. We have a woman who's voted her entire life and is encouraging her grandchildren to vote. And we have, women who've said that they aren't voters, understand the importance of voters. And so please take a moment and hear from the Black women in Milwaukee.
What are your thoughts just about the current state of our country right now?
Well, to be honest with you, it's very confusing. I'm concerned about the state of our country because right now I think that our democracy is being threatened. And if we don't have rights, what will we have? And I'm concerned that people will not vote because they think that Biden is too old and they think, well, Trump is a criminal. But yet if they don't vote, Trump has a chance of getting in. So I'm like, you have to choose the less of the two evils as far as I'm concerned.
Can I ask you this? I know next week we're going to have the RNC here. What are your thoughts about Trump and the Republicans coming to town? Any concerns, thoughts?
No, I don't have any concerns. I don't. So I'm just like, whatever, we'll see what happens, okay? I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do and what I always do, and that's vote, because that's our God-given right now, and we need to do that, all of us, so.
And I just have two more questions for you. When you go to the polls this cycle, what is the most important issue to you?
I think it's just like human rights. I mean, it's just, basically human rights, civil rights. I mean, just knowing that someone is in office that I feel is looking out for me. That's my number one concern.
And thank you so much, Ms. Beatrice. My last question, for people that are looking to stay home this election cycle, what do you have to say to them?
Please, please go out and vote. I mean, we had our ancestors died for us to have this right. And now it's critical more than any time for us to get out and vote. So that's what I'm encouraging all of my grandchildren and everybody to go.
So as you know, in 4 months, we have an election coming. How are you feeling about the current state of our country?
I feel that it's really rocky. I do also feel that we're very undecided as a whole, which can be very confusing for a lot, especially, I'm sorry not to speak about our culture in particular, but we have a way of just going for things when it sounds good, but not actually seeing results.
Next week is the Republican National Convention. How do you feel about Trump and the Republican convention coming to Milwaukee?
I don't agree with it. And then Milwaukee alone is one of the worst in the nation, especially in 53206 for black males. So how are we having a Republican convention when we're not even fixing the things here in our city?
This election, as you head to the polls, what is the most important issue to you and also to your community?
Education, public education, our north side, especially the north side of Milwaukee, healthcare, and I do believe in the food share program for women and child care system.
It's 2024. It's an election in 4 months. How are you feeling about the current state of our country?
It's in trouble. I feel like because we work with certain populations, housing is a big issue, going to the grocery store is a big issue, paying bills, rent is sky high. So there need to be some strong advocacy for people in that arena.
Any thoughts?
Same. I would piggyback off that. We just need a lot more support, definitely in our community that we come from, yes.
We are headed into next week. I know the Republican National Convention will be here. Trump will be here. What are your thoughts about them coming to Milwaukee?
I don't have I have personal views on Trump. I don't think he is for the people, of his caliber. Yes, I've seen the commercials where he's saying, more tax for the rich and things like that. But what about just the common, everyday 9-to-5 people?
And do you have any thoughts about the RNC coming to Milwaukee next week?
I'm excited. I'm ready to see, what they have to offer, what they have to say. I'm excited to see what running mate Trump will have. I mean, I'm not, ultimately excited about his election or what may happen, but between him and Biden, it's a close run and we don't know what we might get. So it's interesting to see what they have to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. And I have one more question for you ladies. Since we have, I think now, 100-something days until the vote in November, 4 months, there are some people that are considering, I'm tired of all this, I'm not going to vote, I'm going to sit home. What do you have to say to those people that are saying, I'm tired of voting, I won't engage in this process?
Well, I personally, my family doesn't vote, so I never kind of got into the voting arena. I think that people who have been voting, they should continue to because your voice is heard. If I mean, even with like all of the like protests and things, some people can get together and make a change, though. Yeah.
Any thoughts?
As far as voting, get out and vote. Be heard. I mean, we never know if it's rigged, if it's going to make a difference, but do your part. Do your part. That's all we can do. We fought for the right to vote, so let's exercise it.
So, it's 2024. It's an election year. What are your thoughts just about the current state of our country?
My thoughts about the current state of our country, it's a lot of, like she said, confusing. But at the same time, I think that it's a lot of like demonic energy going on, where it's like a lot of principalities is trying to take over the globe and things of that nature. Also, I feel like it's a lot of fear that they are trying to implement on people's minds, and making them feel like another pandemic is coming, or if the Republicans get back in office, like what's going to happen is like there'll be no extra care and things of that nature. So I think it's just more so like a worry and a stress that's being implemented on the current state right now. Yeah.
Thank you. And what do you think?
That as well. I'm concerned about the education of our children. Also our food resources, things of that nature. And
There are some people that are considering, like we said, it's too much. They're considering not voting at all this cycle.
Right.
And
Don't
what
do
do
that.
you have to say for people that are considering not voting at all?
no, vote, period. You know what I'm saying? Just don't sit there. Definitely don't sit there, because I'm going to get out here and try to get them to come in. I don't care who, what. We all need to vote, because Congress is colorful. And, we got more women there now. I don't have anything against the men, but we're more nurturing. So.
I like that. Yeah. Any thoughts?
For me, if you don't want to vote, I would just say vote liberal. That way it's less controversial. But if it was up to me, I'll just vote for Jesus. I'm just saying, because at this day and world that we live in, either side, you just really never know. So, and it's just more so start owning your own stuff and maybe go make your own little land. But I will encourage people to vote. If you don't know Democrat or Republican, just vote liberal. Yeah. So get one vote in to somebody.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. Vote for Jesus. That's it. That's it.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Welcome back. Please drop into the chat your thoughts about what these women are sharing, and does that resonate to the women in your life? Not only the women in your community, but we know Black women from all over the country. I want to thank Ebony Taylor, our Vice President of Programs, and April Turner, our Vice President of Communications, for going to Milwaukee and spending, I think, about a day and a half. And this is just some of the rich conversations that we had that we will be showing throughout the week. This is your go-to place to be informed, engaged, and to take action on our way to the end of voting, which is 113 days. We are your place that you will find, information, not mis or disinformation. And so, Ebony and April, share a little bit about your time in Milwaukee.
Sure thing.
Go ahead, Ebony.
Go ahead.
I'll start because the segment just played. It was just so interesting talking to Black women voters. And I live in the DC area, so I'm very much inside the bubble, inside the Beltway. So it's nice to get out and talk to women to hear exactly what are their top concerns. I think Adrienne hit the nail on the head earlier when she said that, they are definitely engaged, but they don't sit around all day long how we do and breathe and eat these issues. And I thought it was very interesting that Higher Heights also did some polling earlier this year, and it was consistent with what we saw that were important to Black women on the issues, and that was the economy. And we were very clear about that, not just the economy, but the cost of things. And you heard people talk about the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of mortgage and rent. They want to have safe communities. Crime is a top concern for Black women voters, as is gun gun violence in their communities and in education and so on and so on. So it was interesting to talk to a swath of Black women voters in Milwaukee, from our first person who was more seasoned, and then we had some Gen Z in there as well, and some in between. Across the spectrum, they had a lot of similar concerns.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, not being present with you, April, for those, I was calling them street beat conversations. I mean, it really does just further solidify the conversations that, I had with the four amazing women that I spoke to, who are more in the political space and more, voters themselves, but also keeping their ears to the ground around voter sentiment. But as Higher Heights, continues to lift up this narrative about Black women being truth tellers, especially against this backdrop of this constant barrage, right, of mis and disinformation, I think we got just that, right, the truth from these women, from these Black women in Milwaukee. And this, like I said, just further cements the understanding that Black women are reliable sources, and they will relay, right, an authentic and true drumbeat of what's happening on the ground. And so really excited for these next few segments where we lift up conversations that we had with local and state leaders. We spoke to LaTanya Johnson, who's a Wisconsin state senator. We spoke to a few folks from the Wisconsin Dem Party. We spoke to a Wisconsin state representative who's currently running for in a special election for a state Senate seat. But some of the themes that came out of the conversation around the RNC were the city's financial woes and how the RNC is looked at as a perceived opportunity for increased revenue. In this city of nearly, Milwaukee has a Black population of nearly 40%, which is I think is neck and neck with the white population, but that's a huge percent, right? So, and I think you're right, April, when you talk about the polling that Higher Heights did earlier this year, is certainly aligned with, hey, I care more about the direction of this city. I care more about what both sides of the aisle are able to do for this city of, again, mostly Black people. We also heard that the city is a city of open arms. We heard that all are welcomed. And so even one of our speakers said, hey, I want to know what the opposition is talking about. And we heard that in the conversations that you had, April, on the street. Even one woman saying, I'm excited. I'm excited for them to show up, and because I want to hear what they're going to talk about. We also heard a little bit of voters possibly being apathetic to the RNC's presence. But the thing that shocked me the most is even in your street beat conversations, April, I didn't hear, and in my conversations, I didn't hear absolute disdain for Wisconsin or for the RNC coming to Wisconsin, and that was pretty shocking. That was pretty shocking. I think I had an expectation that people were gonna be like, really up in arms about it, and they weren't.
Oh, you're muted, Glenda. You're still muted.
Oh, still muted.
Glenda's stuck.
I got something to say. It speaks to a couple of things. Do a little, quick history. The Democratic convention was supposed to be in Milwaukee in 2020. There was a lot of energy around that. It was a lot of economic opportunities, right? The team just went to Chicago because we'll be doing an event in Chicago during the Democratic convention. And so the tourism board and the city rolled out the carpet to say, here are locations you can host things. Like it is a opportunity for people to, in a time where inflation and the cost of living is so high, I think they understand the importance of that. People are going to get extra shifts, that there's more, economic opportunities. But I will also say, we're having a virtual conversation this week. We're going to be on the back end hosting an event next week to kind of get the reaction of what the week, what narrative and what came out of the week, that there were many businesses that closed. right? That they were afraid of the possibilities of the extreme right. Wisconsin is an open carry state.
Yeah.
And what we heard from vendors and others that they were afraid of, people coming in to disrupt. To be frank, may not even be, part of the actual convention, but disruptors for their own convention, right? There's discussion about the Democrats having protests. There were conversations about disruptors for the Republican National Convention who happened to be potentially open carrying weapons. And so I think people are afraid. They're staying home. Many people, businesses are shutting down. People are allowed to telework. But it is an economic driver, and it's drawing attention to a state that is in play in this election cycle. And Black voters are certainly in play. And so I think there's that pride of, you're going to have to talk to me and talk about the issues that I care about as a Black woman. If Miss Beatrice, who is she is literally Higher Heights, right? She is going to be fired up to bring her house, her block, her church, her sorority, her union, and her grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just want to add, Glenda, to your point, being there on the ground, we were there obviously a few days before they start, but we did see the barricades. We did see the street closures. We did see the increased police presence, and Milwaukee is bracing itself for what, they think is going to happen. Given yesterday's events with the president in Pennsylvania, who knows what that means. And, I want to say this is not just one party. The Democratic Convention will do the very same thing, just to make sure that they're safe, people are safe, and they're able to have their convention. So it is a very interesting time, but Milwaukee was definitely getting ready to have, I believe they expect 50,000 people there for this convention. And they're staying as far as Chicago, Madison, all over the place to descend on Milwaukee. So yes, it will be a very interesting week.
Well, as Ebony mentioned, we also had an opportunity to sit down with some Black women leading both in elected leadership and in party leadership. And so we're going to toss to a conversation with Ebony Taylor. And Ebony, say who it is because I'm scrolling.
I believe this is LaTanya's conversation, State Senator LaTanya Johnson, who's amazing. State Senator Johnson, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you just start this conversation off by introducing yourself, and talking about your district that you serve and that you lead?
Sure. I'm State Senator LaTanya Johnson. I represent the 6th Senate District here in Milwaukee, which consists of Milwaukee's north and west side and parts of Wauwatosa. I'm fortunate enough to represent half of downtown, which is the Pfizer Forum, where the Bucks play, the Baird Center Arena, which is our convention center, the U.S. Cellular Arena, the Milwaukee Theater, basically that entire Wisconsin Center District is in my district, so also going to be home to the Republican National Convention this weekend.
So speaking of the RNC, what is your constituency thinking about, right, the RNC being in town? What are you thinking about, right, having, if we can say, a bit of a controversial event happening downtown?
For me, I understand the need for the businesses to have them here. Milwaukee was also supposed to be home for the Democratic National Convention last time, and because of COVID, that was canceled. And so I understand that there were a lot of businesses who made a lot of investments for that convention and plans to take home increased revenue. So having the Republican National Convention choose Milwaukee this time, for those businesses, I hope the revenue manifests because I understand that they need it. The concern for me is, I'm sure the concern for any body living here, especially in the city of Milwaukee, it would be nice if we could have my Republican colleagues care about Milwaukee every single day. And that's not the case. We are loving the publicity. It has been a good prelude for other conventions to take notice of Milwaukee and want to schedule things here. But at the same time, Milwaukee has a lot of unmet needs. 70% of the state's poor live right here in the city of Milwaukee. So we have communities that are challenged. Milwaukee has issues with gun violence like other major cities. That is a challenge. And so having cooperation from my Republican colleagues to make Milwaukee a safe place, just like the rest of the state, is imperative, but we haven't seemed to have gotten any cooperation with that.
And you mentioned, thank you for that. You mentioned violence, you mentioned gun violence, you mentioned that the RNC is bringing in revenue. What are some of the other issues that sort of undergird and lead us to this moment? What are some of the other issues that, again, your constituency, what are the things that they're holding close to their hearts and want to see changed?
So just wanting to see equity in their neighborhoods, wanting to see investments in their neighborhoods. Public safety is a huge issue. When you go to the doors and you knock on those doors and you talk to voters, they always list three things almost 90% of the time. Public safety is number one, reckless driving, and then affordability, being able to afford food, housing, just your basic necessities are always issues. We've seen a lot of drop-offs when it comes to voting in the city of Milwaukee. Like in 2016, 60,000 people from Milwaukee alone stayed home and chose not to vote. Now those numbers have been going up. We have seen an increase of individuals coming back to the ballot box, which is extremely helpful for us. But I think that Milwaukee, our voters suffered from not fatigue, but just a sense of feeling like their elected officials didn't care about them until election time rolled around. And that's been a major issue of trying to get people to understand the importance of their vote and the importance of their voice.
So sticking on that topic, we're 4 months out from November, from the general election. Can you talk a bit about your thoughts on, as you say, voting right has increased, more people are coming out. What are your thoughts as we head into this huge election in November and how people might turn out?
I think that we have to, as a city, focus on getting people out and meeting them where they are. A lot of people think, holding these rallies or having President Biden come to Milwaukee is it, rather than realizing that you have to meet people exactly where they are. You have to go to those doors and have those conversations. And you have to be willing to have honest, frank conversations with people on the doors. Sometimes it's just a matter of people not going out to vote because they don't understand the importance or the significance. Because I've been told, regardless of who's, elected, my life isn't going to change. Mm-hmm. And that's because they don't understand the importance of that vote. Mm-hmm. There is not a statewide election that could be won. There's not a presidential election that can be won without the power of Milwaukee, whether that's them staying at home to prove a point and we losing necessarily the best candidate for us and for our issues, or them showing up strong and then we winning those elections. People need to understand that everybody plays a part, right? I've noticed from talking to people on the door sometimes, they think, oh, you're a good person. Once we get you elected, that's it. There's nothing left to do. No, that's just the beginning. Because sending somebody to an elected position is one thing. Making sure that they actually do what they say for the community is something totally different. I often tell people, would you go to work and work a 40-hour work week, and then at the end of those 2 weeks, when you've collected your check, give it to me to cash and to spend and to pay your bills? And people are not like, no, why would I do that? That's exactly what you do when you send somebody into office and you don't hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. They touch every single aspect of your life and you don't realize it because you're not paying attention.
Yeah. And so I just thank you so much for your time and talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, State Senator LaTanya Johnson, for your thoughts. We also had an opportunity to talk to State Representative Dora E. Drake and Felicia A. Martin, who's a Milwaukee County Board Supervisor, who I think really explained the moment in Milwaukee, the opportunities, the threats, in the moment as they prepare for the Republican National Convention. Take a look.
And so when we talk about, the Republican National Convention coming to Milwaukee, obviously there is a plus of hosting a national convention, how it can be beneficial for our small business owners, give them an opportunity to really expand their business, right? With that being said, due to the nature of, this presidential election and what we're hearing from Republicans and Trump as the potential nominee, we are concerned about the safety, of people here in the city, not just in downtown, but overall, and frankly, what they stand for. We've heard a lot of talk about Project 2025. I've heard a lot about just protecting our democracy and our elections. The previous special election that we had on July 2nd, we had GOP hecklers that were challenging every absentee ballot, in Glendale. And so thankfully, we had local officials that were on top of it, and they made sure that this elections were safe and secured. But they outright told folks that this was just a practice run for the election in November. And so when we talk about the RNC, the impact of Milwaukee, there is an economic benefit, but for the values, we have a lot of concerns about that. And I know that there are voters that want to make sure that they have an opportunity to disagreeably share, what they disagree with, regarding the RNC and what that means for Milwaukee and, quite frankly, Wisconsin.
So are voters or are your constituents seeing the benefits that have been espoused? Are they seeing, are small businesses seeing the benefit of the RNC being here so far, or is that yet to be seen?
I think that's still a work in progress. I know that obviously we're expecting a large turnout with people coming in, booking hotels, obviously renting out spaces, at restaurants. But we know that we want to make sure that every business has an opportunity to thrive, and that includes our small and minority-owned businesses. And so I know that our local officials are doing their due diligence and making sure those opportunities are provided to them. But that's something that we are hopefully would see a huge return of investment on with this convention.
Thank you so much. Here in Milwaukee, and would love to learn and to know more about what you're hearing on the ground as it relates to the Republican National Convention as we head into that week-long event.
Milwaukee, the city with open arms, who likes to move forward. And this year we're actually hosting the RNC, the Republican National Convention. And what I'm hearing on the ground in regards to this, and I'm going to be quite candid if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
When these things were being negotiated, the thing I heard the most and the loudest is, why do they need to come to Milwaukee? Can't they go to Florida? Can't they go to Nashville? Well, no one else wanted them. And Milwaukee is the city with open arms, and our mayor and our county executive invited them in. And so here we are, anticipating an economic boost from the RNC here in Milwaukee, which is a wonderful city. It's a great space on a great lake with 3 rivers, not 1, not 2, but 3 wonderful rivers running through it. And what we are hearing from voters here in Milwaukee, and those who haven't decided yet whether they want to vote, they are concerned about those things that impact their lives every single day. They are looking at, how do I pay my rent? How do I get a family sustaining job? And hopefully that job has benefits, because health care is a number one thing. And we know that included in that health care is mental health wellness. That is one of our number one issues here in Milwaukee. We see a lot of crime as well as homelessness related to mental wellness. And that is something that voters really want our government to start paying specific attention to mental health wellness, whole health wellness, because without wellness, education, homes, and food security, that is about the quality of life. And if those four major things are not met in a person's life, you end with chaos. And that is what some folks feel, that their lives are in chaos right now.
Thank you to all of the women in Milwaukee who've been working with us over the last couple of months to build a program centering Black women's voices in this moment. Thank you to the women on the street that took the time and really had the courage to share their thoughts about Black women voting in this election cycle. So it's a busy countdown to Election Day, and we are your go-to election center. We're helping Black women to vote, run, win, and lead, and we've kicked off our summer tour. Last week, we were in Dallas with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, my beloved sorority, and we kicked off for the first time ever. We built, literally, y'all, we built a democracy house. So if you were AKA in the chat and you saw us on social media or you were there, make some noise. It was an opportunity for people to sign up, learn about if you're interested in running for office, if you're an elected leader, information about how you can raise your voice in this democracy. And we're taking that house on tour. We'll be at Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated's national convention, which is in Indianapolis, Indiana. We will be at Sigma Gamma Rho's national convention, which is in Houston. But the kickoff was with my beloved sorority, 20,000 Black women. And by the way, our vice president, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, stopped by the convention to a roaring, not only a roaring ski-wee, but an opportunity for her to share her vision for the country moving forward and sharing some of the accomplishments that she has done as a vice president of the United States. We also will be your go-to place for information throughout this week. We're partnering with Sister Lead, Sister Vote, and I will be on one of their programs, I believe on Thursday night, but you are obviously a part of our network and you will get real-time information. And meet us back here next Sunday because we will be airing our Sunday brunch conversation in Milwaukee here in the Black Women Lead House. But we need you to spread the word. Bring for your friends. Black women build exclusive tables. So although this is space formed by Black women, I see our allies in the chat, understanding that this is a place for them to be informed and to be able to have conversations with their networks. So once again, thank you for being part of Higher Heights, your political home, and thank you for taking some time on your Sunday to Sunday brunch with Higher Heights. Good afternoon.